Okay, for people joining this live stream, this is part 2 of this month's suggestions and priorities discussion about Wolfram Language. We had a very good, if long, discussion on Friday, where we went through a bunch of topic areas, and we are going to keep going with other topic areas. This is being seeded by the Redmine system that we have been using to track pre-release comments about our upcoming version 12.1, but other comments can come in on the live stream. However, we have only a particular set of people relevant for the topics that were in the Redmine list who are here. So people bring in completely other things, we may or may not be able to address them. If we can't address them this time, we will address them another time, and hopefully we have notes from the previous time of things that we were unable to address. Hopefully those can be found. Okay, we're going to start off with graphs and networks. So, morphological graph, return pixel coordinates. The edges. This is an image processing issue, isn't it?
Yes.
Just so you can see, this was reported 2 days ago. It's not been processed yet by the people that process these things. So that's maybe why it's misassigned and misreported.
I see. Okay. Pixel coordinates of edges. I can't address this one unless Shadi is here. I don't think we can address this one today. Oops! What just happened here? I went back and it just. Oh gosh, that's bad. How do I go? I see. I have to start a new. Okay, add a find longest path function. I think we already discussed that, didn't we, last time, Charles?
Yes.
Yes. I think we did that one,
yeah. Better display form for shortest path function.
We discussed that one too. And we said yes.
Okay. Graph generators to produce natural vertex names. We talked about that as well, I believe.
No.
No.
Okay, well, let's take a look at that one. Create graphs use the index of vertices as vertex names. Natural for a given graph. Grid graph should use the grid indices. Well, that's an interesting idea.
Well, we have it. It depends of when it's useful. We do it like, there's a bunch of graph where we do it. And in some cases, we have to take into account a bunch of things like the amount of memory use, especially like grid graph, where you get, a huge amount of, vertex and edge, and you need the packed array, vertex and such. So.
Okay, so if I say grid graph of like 5, 5, I will get that grid graph. And you're telling me that if I were to say, vertex names, vertex labels, arrow automatic in this graph
is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay, but so how would I get the coordinate positions?
He doesn't want the coordinate position here. He wants the triples. Here is the doubles. Doubles 1, 1.
That's what I mean. The coordinate positions on the grid, right? The coordinate position on the grid, so it starts off at 0, 0.
They're not unique. They are not unique. It's you just need to map them. There is no guarantee that it has to be 1, 1.
No, I understand that, but I mean, just like these numbers are not unique, we could put these numbers at anything we want, right? But what I'm saying is, what he's saying, and what I'm saying is, there is, given the way this was generated, there is a natural coordinate system. I mean, it could be anywhere. It could start off at 0, 0 in the middle. It could do a bunch of different things. But there is the question is, if the generator of the graph knows something about the natural names of the nodes, it would be nice to pass that through potentially.
Yes, and we do that for some graph. We decided not to do that for. One of the latest one is nearest is the mesh connectivity. We do that nearest graph. We do that automatically. It's also part of the whole manipulation. So we had to make a decision between generating them based, how much memory will cost.
No, I understand, but Charles, that's not the default. We understand it's not the default. The question is, I mean, so in this case, and Jabolt's, I think, on live stream is asking at least document what the order is for grid graph. So this is effectively a pairing function or a tupling function that you're using to find a way to make a linear description of all of these, right? I mean, you could in general use, one of these Cantor pairing function thingies or some generalization of that to go through the grid and make a one-dimensional sequence out of it, right?
Right.
So you are picking a particular ordering, which seems to be, and it might be good to at least document what that mapping is for grid graph. Make sense?
Okay.
I
I'm
don't know.
I'm not convinced. I don't see the.
Yeah, it's.
You have to put a case when it's really useful, and we have function to, if you want to do the mapping, we have
what
a whole
mapping?
If you want to replace the vertex, you want to use tuples. You can use index graph. You can do vertex replace.
Yeah, I understand that. I understand that. But we know when we generate this graph, we know the mapping from coordinate positions into graph positions, right?
And when you say coordinate, you mean something else than vertex coordinates, just so we're clear.
Yeah. I mean the conceptual coordinates that made this grid.
Okay, we can document that.
I mean, it just seems like an easy thing to document, given that we are doing it in a definite way. But the question of whether there should be other places where
you see, I'm not too convinced on documenting because it's also implementation based, right? So that means we lock ourselves to that implementation.
Okay, well, fine, but then maybe it's not that. Maybe we didn't even think it through properly what the sequence is. Okay, in any case, I'm discussing more.
I don't know. I mean, it seems like make do work of questionable value.
You can see the
and
same
that locks us in.
You can say the same for complete graph, where you want them from left to right. Right? You can say the same for star graph, where you want the center to be 1 and then the point to a certain position. You can pretty much require that ordering for all graph constructors.
Okay, so for example, in this case here, yeah, okay. I mean, that does some perfectly reasonable ordering there.
The order we generate for sure is in more natural default order. That part I'm definitely sure.
Well, okay, so Schabolz is making the point that one needs to be able to depend on the ordering if one's going to use these functions.
Why?
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 We have vertex list for that. Why?
You mean you go from vertex list, but you don't know where it is in the, okay, so thread. I see. So that's in fact what it's doing here.
Yes, we have tuples. You can map it.
Yeah, I know. So long as it doesn't change what it's doing. All right, let's move on from this topic. I mean, this is clearly a more complicated topic. Whether something is a vertex or an edge, that's a different issue. All right, this is more on this another time. This is, I think, a bit complicated here. I mean, my feeling, my summary about this is there should be a way to get access to whatever the underlying generator expression was for that vertex.
Why? I mean, so one thing is we're trying to maintain a certain abstraction here because it gives flexibility to use alternate implementations. So if you rely on some property like that, then it's, I mean, that's like a side effect. That's not what the property of the graph is.
Fair point.
So,
let's move on.
I'm not saying that someone can't come up with an important reason why, but I haven't heard it yet.
Yeah, I think the point is, the point being made here is if you need to rely on the positions, I have to say, I suspect I may even have code now that relies on positions in maybe not, because yeah, it will be good, at least in the documentation for grid graph, to show how you can get, given that you're not going to rely on this, how you can find the coordinate position, so to speak, of a vertex in the graph, should you need to do so. In other words, how you can discover that mapping, which you surely can do just by graph distances, right?
But doesn't it always also change when you change the embedding of the graph?
No, absolutely not. It has nothing to do with the embedding.
No.
No, that point, given that this is the origin, whatever we're calling the origin, that point is at graph distance. It's Manhattan distance, such and such, 4, 4 or something, right? 2, 2, no, 4. I don't know exactly how to get this.
Well,
yeah, I mean,
I will put something, the possible issue, how you can always get that. That shouldn't be a problem in the documentation.
All right, let's start with that. Okay, placement of edge. We got a bunch of background noise. If we can cut that out, that'd be good. Some comment from Ethan here about placement of edge labels in an edge tag graph is problematic. I don't know about that. Can you comment on that, Charles? I mean, the edge tag graphs are a new thing.
Right. So the edge tag graph, essentially you tag an edge. So function like find shortest path return the vertices you actually traverse. Right. So roughly speaking, the person here wants the edge. Right.
I see.
And well, like similar to the other case, we made a choice here to return more a list of vertices, especially because we want to keep the structure condensed, a packed array of integer when the graph is sampled. Sure, the case where you have multiple edges, right? You can always say which edge am I picking when I do the traversal.
No, but it doesn't matter if it's a multi-graph. It doesn't matter which edge you pick.
Well, except when the graph is weighted.
Okay.
So where you pick the smallest vertex, so smallest edge. So that's the only case. So as I said earlier, there is a lot of functionality we may add or review or improve because we have now tag edge. So
yeah, well, it sounds like we could imagine a shortest path, a second argument or something, except shortest path already has second argument, but some argument to shortest path that says what you want to return.
Right.
Early on to not create a new object like a path object, because then we need a whole arithmetic and set of manipulation on that object.
Yeah, I understand. Whereas a vertex list, presumably you can just append vertex lists and you will get a longer path.
For instance,
you don't need right.
Yeah.
Well, this is something to look at. This is a more complicated thing. We're not going to solve it instantly. But let's see, a graph. Oh, I see, the list of edges. Yeah, this is exactly what you were talking about, weighted edges. Yeah, it's a good point. Not solved, but a good point. All right, how do I go on here? We have an example here on the live stream about why is there going to be a way to make a weighted edge by itself without edge weights? What does that mean? Isn't a weighted edge characterized by the edge weights? Isn't that what the point of a weighted edge is?
Yes.
Wait a second. But how do you make, the question is there a naked weighted edge independent of its position in the graph with edge weights? I mean, edge weights is an option, right?
Yes. I think because they saw the tagged being a naked way to do it. They want, I think, I'm guessing implicitly there is a question. Can you do a similar sort of stick the weight right in there in the edge?
Yes, which would be a good thing to be able to do.
Well, no, it depends. If you are constructing the graph, you can still use the property or annotation as a wrapper.
I see. So you can say annotation. So the idea then is that in this graph, if I have a graph of the form, so if I say annotation 1 goes to 2, edge weight goes to 7 or something, and then I say 2 goes to 3, 3 goes to 1 or whatever, right?
Yeah, that will work.
Now, is there any indication there that there's a weight on that edge? That would be a nice thing to have.
Visually, not by default. I think
at least a
edge
tooltip
label
nice.
Edge label goes to edge weight or something. I don't remember exactly. The stuff should give something like that.
Edge labeling or edge labels?
Edge labels. And I think we had, well, I need to look at it. It's weight property.
As a quotes edge weight or something? Yeah, that seems to give there they are. Yeah, there are the edge weights. Not as beautiful as they could be, but they're something. I'm sure I can put placed and can I say call out of edge weight or something here?
No, we don't yet support call out.
That would be nice. Could I say something else here?
You can say place, but we need to give a position. And the coordinate now is, no, the position is more based on the edge. So, you know, top and middle and such. No, so it's start, I think it's a string start. Not sure I remember all that again. Yeah, it's a string start, middle, end.
Well, it doesn't work. Okay, but anyway, we do have the ability to put edge weights as an annotation on an edge, which is nice. And that's a nice general way to do it. Okay, Javalts is mentioning some detailed things, which I encourage you guys to look at after this.
Is that how you say his name?
I don't know. He can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's correct from a previous live stream.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Doesn't come easy.
And I'm sure I don't have all the correct phonemes because I didn't grow up in a maximal phoneme environment. I'm quite certain even you, Roger, could generate Swedish phonemes that I could not imitate.
Yes.
Okay. It's an autocompletion for vertex shape function. Is that, well, that just seems like a bug. I don't know whether I need to even type this. I'm sure it's an autocomplete bug. Oh, well, can it support name?
What would that be? Actually, does it support that? I mean, I'm just wondering what it.
Yes, it does. So that should be in the autocomplete.
Well, we made a choice to pick a certain set for the autocomplete.
But this is a useful thing to have in the autocomplete. I don't know what is this documented?
Yes, vertex, we have a.
All right. I think this should be in the autocomplete. I see no reason it shouldn't be in the autocomplete, particularly if it's documented for vertex shape function.
Oh no, but it's misunderstanding. Name means these named capsule and so on.
No, it does not. It does not.
Is the name, is the vertex list from the vertex list. You remember we have the...
No, this is a different thing. This is a named vertex function, but this is something where you're using the name of the, this is confusing. This is confusing because this vertex shape function is, this is, and by the way, why does vertex shape function not autocomplete with automatic? I guess because it doesn't need to, because that wouldn't, you wouldn't type
But
it
then
in
name
that
is not
case.
documented in vertex shape function.
Well, to completion, we have to pick. We have a whole list of vertex shape function.
Yeah, we do.
Right?
Okay, I understand that. I'm asking the question. Name appears to be a possible setting for vertex shape function. It is not documented here.
Yes.
Okay, should it be documented here?
Well, that's another issue. You see, to graph element data, square, capsule shape, and such are not documented. It's a choice you made at the time.
No. I'm asking this thing name, this name here, name like this, that gives these. Should that be documented? I would think the answer is yes. Okay, my second point is this way of doing discovery of things like this is really not sensible. And I thought we had agreed that we're going to talk about a general way to solve this problem. So, you know, whether it's musical instruments and sound note, whether it's, you know, color data things, they all have slightly different mechanisms. We need a unified mechanism for discovering these settings. Right, so that's a separate meeting, which I think we were planning to have. Yes, and this should be. Can we? Who's PMing here?
Chapin.
Okay, so can you please add that to the list of things that will be discussed in the meeting about? I guess it will be called settings discovery. Okay.
Okay.
Got it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, so this particular thing appears to be undocumented. The fact you can use quotes, name with a capital N. I don't know what else you can use here. Why would you want to use name with a capital N? Because isn't that just the vertex label?
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm confused here. I'm confused. Maybe you guys can unconfuse me. We got to move on because we got lots of stuff to go through here. Okay.
I mean, it doesn't mean it's impossible to have, but it's sort of confusing two concepts. But it's using.
Well, then we just should link to that. Under vertex shape function, I assume that the first link here, I don't know why the first link isn't vertex labels, but that's a reasonable thing to do. All right, let's keep going here. Diagrams, graph styles should not change the vertex label location. I don't know what this is. What is graph style?
It's a precursor to plot theme. So this is what's now called plot theme.
And okay, this version we deprecated that symbol. So
right, but nevertheless, you know, a plot theme can certainly reset the label location.
No,
you can have it. Yeah, it's an option, so you can certainly reset that. Whether it's, you know.
So I assume that if I were to say here something like, if I say label style arrow.
You mean vertex label?
Oops.
Very confused. Okay, let's do it again. Vertex label style. Was that a correct autocomplete that I could get that vertex? Yes, I guess that's right. Okay, fine. Okay, so that then overrides the plot theme.
That's right.
Styling. That seems correct to me. Okay, I've not read this. So is there commentary here, or is this just, am I being given the raw input here?
Well, I think,
is there commentary here for these, or is this just raw input? Because we should have one round of commentary before we do these.
I think his problem is that...
Arnaud, wait a second. Could Arnaud answer that question?
Commentary from who or what?
From somebody before it's just throwing it at me. Okay?
Well,
that's not the idea here. Let's get commentary from whoever the appropriate developer is before we...
right? So QA reports internal bug reports, which are linked from this report. I'm not sure if you want to click on this particular one, but like
Okay, so
internal commentary is in the internal bug report.
For these discussions, we need a summary of that. Okay, so we're not just making it up. Okay, and I'm going to move on, unless Charles, you had one other comment here.
Yes, so essentially, when you say vertex label goes to automatic, we implicitly assume that you mean the placement has to be top right. So that's why then we change the placement. So that's his only complaint, is that automatic should be disregarded because it's automatic. So it's
for what?
For the vertex label placement. So when you say vertex label goes to automatic, implicitly we assume that the label is the name and the position is top right.
Yes. So
his claim is that when you put automatic, we shouldn't change that if the plot style is specified. I see that's
shouldn't change
design.
what?
Shouldn't change the position of the label.
Well, the plot theme can do whatever it wants.
Exactly, I agree.
And if you don't want what it does, then override it.
Exactly, so that's has design.
Okay, all right, fine. That seems sensible. Option for find graph partition to find connected partitions.
That's a feature request.
Okay. Offhand sounds sensible, but I don't know in detail. Are there any further comments on it?
We'll look into that. I mean, we are reviewing that if it's fit with the design.
There's not yet in the internal report.
Okay.
So it's
document find communities methods. Okay, I don't know. I mean, Charles, that's for you. I don't really know. Have you? Is there something? Do you have some comment on this?
It depends on the level of the documentation. I believe in the documentation of find community, we have enough detail about it, right? Modularity, centrality, clip correlation, right? So, depending on people, some people want us to write a whole technical document about the method. That's a choice, but I don't think it's a top priority right now.
No, I wouldn't have thought it was. But I think we should answer the question. If maybe somebody could just answer on the community, just answer a few sentences of answer for what these are. And then if people want to know that in the future, they can go look at that community post. That seems like the right way to handle this, rather than writing official documentation for it. Seem reasonable?
Yes.
Digraph 6 format for graphs. That's an import format, yes?
Yes.
I don't know what that's really about. So that will be a kind of a combined format for sparse 6 and for graph 6. And is there a standard name for that? If there is, we should support it. If there isn't, we shouldn't. Apparently D6 is supposed to be the standard name for that combination, in which case we should support it. And that seems like a rather easy thing to do. Okay, let's move on. Do you agree? Do you disagree? I assume you've read these, Charles. Have you read these before this meeting?
Yes,
okay.
All of them.
Okay, fine. So what's the answer here?
Yes, in the list of suggestions, we are going to look into them.
Okay, but let's be specific on this particular one. Is this? Do you agree? Do you disagree?
So first of all, here's how we decided which graph formats to support originally. We tracked down 75 different libraries that use and operate on graphs. What formats do they in fact support? We picked from them the top 10 that are most supported among all the tools. It wasn't willy-nilly done. It wasn't something random, just saying because it's there, we're going to do it.
Yeah, well, but this one seems like it's.
So we need to look into it.
Yeah, fine. And it's probably evolved over the years. Okay, great. Let's move on. Graph union should support a single argument.
This is a suggestion. We are going to add it just for uniformity.
Okay. All right. Fine. Okay. Okay. Can we talk about image processing, or do we not have the right people here?
We do not have Shadi, but we do have Cloud.
So the answer is digraph 6 did not exist when graph 6 and sparse 6 support was added. So it's relevant to look into again. Okay. I'm sorry. What are you talking about? We don't believe we have any items still left to go with the cloud stuff. We went over that last time, did we not? If not, please tell me which items are still to go.
So we have 8gen, so I would just skip to machine learning and neural networks. That's the most.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi. Okay.
And I must say that this list is fairly new to me, but I'm happy to discuss them.
Okay, that's not the right procedure here. So
yeah,
our node
that's what
for
I
the future,
understood.
that's not the right procedure.
Yeah, so my audio is, I just have a lot of background noise, so I apologize for the background noise. These should all have bug reports, so I think 8gen should have had at least an opportunity. Let me check now, except the very newest one is not, but everything except the first one. Yeah.
Unknown layer. Interesting.
Yes.
And a number of reports from Aster C, who's a Wolfram Language user in China who uses machine learning quite a bit. So
okay, that's an interesting idea to import as a missing layer, which one could then do operations on.
Actually, yes, we are going to do that.
Okay.
We're going to do that. I'm not sure what the timeline is, but we also wanted that a lot for the Onyx import. Because it's a bit annoying when you have 99% of your network that import and just one that doesn't import, and then the import doesn't work just because of that.
Right. So then you would then you can hand edit the missing layer.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Okay. New layer request. Pixel normalization layer. I do not know what that is, but I can sort of guess from the name. I don't know about this. Etienne, can you comment on this?
I don't know either.
All right, something to look into. We don't know.
But if it's exactly, if it's used in a known network, classic network, then probably we should add it.
Okay. Pixel shuffle layer. No idea. These are obviously ones for you to look into. I simply don't know about them.
Yeah.
More resampling methods for Resize Layer. So that's a good question. Why Resize Layer doesn't use the same kind of sampling methods that Image Resize uses? For example, by just calling those functions.
I mean, for one, it has to be done on, possibly on GPU and so on. So we cannot just add any function.
Right, but okay, so the thought here would be talk to the image processing team and find out what kinds of resizing we have already defined for image resize.
Yeah, probably they can be implemented in MXNet in some way.
Well, that's interesting. This doesn't list methods here, which is odd. Surprised by that. Maybe there aren't different methods. Oh, resampling method, I see. I see, there's a whole zoo of methods here. So the question is how that relates to what's being discussed here, and even whether the resampling option has, possibly the use of a resampling option in Resize Layer, etc. Make sense?
Yep.
Validation set. Arrow scaled should work for classify and predict. That's a good idea to have a validation set being scaled of something says use this fraction of the set as validation, right?
Yeah, that's true. It works for NetTrain and I guess it was an innovation of NetTrain that we didn't backport to classify and predict. We should.
Okay.
I agree.
Right. That was easy. Okay. Simple lower level API. That sounds much more complicated.
Yes, definitely. That's something we are going to go eventually, but we want to try to put as much of typical usage of neural network in a high-level API first. I believe that often when people want a low-level API, then before that there's still things we can improve in the high-level one. And
right, but I mean, the fact is that as a timing issue, if we offered better access to the low-level API, that still might be 6 months ahead of where we will actually get high-level support for some particular feature. Now, of course, MXNet and so on are also a moving target. And we've been contributing lots to that and making it a moving target. So I don't know exactly what the interface looks like there. I mean, I have to say that in general, our experience with providing low-level interfaces has been mixed. I mean, we have, we could review what they are. I mean, things like, embedded HTML in the cloud, that I think is fairly successful, although it has issues about, what you can communicate. I mean, what tends to happen with these low-level interfaces, then people say, oh, but I want access to this high-level feature from within the low-level interface, and then, sorry, you can't do that. I mean, we used to have, back a long, long time ago, when our graphics was firmly based on PostScript, we used to let people go and okay, so this is one of these stories, right? I mean, we used to let people go and have raw access to the PostScript primitives underneath the graphics. Well, if I look back at the code that I have for the NKS book that makes graphics, basically 100% of that code works today, except the little places where it had a hack that went directly into the PostScript, and that doesn't work anymore. So, it's a kind of a trade-off. But I think in terms of timing and as an experimental thing, having the ability to, access these low-level things easily, and if there are, as this person is claiming, a modest number of interface points, that seems like it would be a worthwhile tech report to describe those. Although, it's a trade-off between, if that's a small amount of time to do that, that's fine. If it's a large amount of time, we might as well be actually building the higher level interface. But I think it'd be worth just looking at this stuff, and maybe the person who wrote this, who's figured it out, could write a community post about it, and that would be a good start.
Mm-hmm.
Etienne, any further comments on that?
No, I agree. We should look at that. Maybe this particular domain are sensible. I guess another comment is that there's two types of going low level. One is allowing the user to write custom layers, and that's something we definitely want to do. Hopefully using the compile function, the new compiler, that should allow to do that. And the second thing is allowing to have access to the training loop, which is a bit different. And that thing we're going to wait a little bit more to output that, but I will look at this.
Why, with respect to the training loop?
So we would need a well, it's certainly it's much more complex. It's like you're getting the gradient yourself, you're doing the optimization yourself.
But why don't we just give a boatload? I mean, why don't we just say, okay, you want the training loop yourself? Here's this association with a boatload of stuff in it.
That, yes, we could do some. Actually, that's probably what we're going to do. Maybe not an association, but just a sort of resumable object. And then you could still use NetTrain, maybe just for one step. And but you have the result of the new network, of course, but also the state of the optimizer and everything else you need to continue training. And you can access, of course, all the information in this resumable object. So that could be one way to.
So I mean, it's kind of a net training object that then can be recomputed with, or you can extract properties of.
Exactly.
Sounds
so I think that would be
be
the way to go.
Right. I mean, I don't know what happens in terms of loading and unloading from GPUs and things. That might be complicated, because I assume that when you're inside NetTrain, things are resident in the GPU and everything's just crunching there.
Yes. I think with the resumable, it would still, like, we wouldn't empty the memory.
Really? But does it know? I mean, so if you had a net training object, maybe that has pointers into the raw GPU memory that I never understand how GPUs interact with operating systems. I have to say, it's always struck me as mysterious. Of when does it know? You know, if you have a pointer into the raw GPU memory, and then you have some other CPU code that's running before it goes back into the GPU stuff, how does that work? Do you understand my question? I mean, so if the thing is a program running in the GPU and it just does what it does, I understand that. But if it stopped running in the GPU and potentially the operating system swapped something else in there, and then it does some CPU stuff and then it goes back to the GPU, how do you know whether the stuff is still there? And what manages that?
I don't exactly know what manages. I know that we do it because the pre-processing is done with the CPU, and the actual network running is on the GPU. And for now, actually, we're not super optimal because I think it waits for the CPU to be over and then GPU continues. But of course, we don't empty the memory. It's still there in the GPU. This would take a long time to each time load in the GPU, then do the computation and do that again.
Right.
But I don't know the detail.
The fact is, Ethan, our live stream is commenting that, you know, modern networks allow dynamic top-level code. Yeah, well, eventually you're just doing an arbitrary computation here. And, you know, in a sense, we made a decision early on in our neural network development that, you know, we had an earlier design that was basically, you know, building that future that is now emerging from the beginning, so to speak, of just allowing arbitrary functions. We didn't do that because that was, when was it? It was probably 7 years ago now. And that was way before any of these capabilities would be efficient. And, you know, now what we have to do is figure out how we sort of go from, you know, how we start putting arbitrary top-level code into something which will turn into essentially a neural net loop. In terms of net function, yeah, the main holdup in net function has been how much should the compiler compile before it's worth, you know, using it to create net function. And I think it's pretty much at the point, probably in the next round of compiler work, we will be trying to insert things with net function. Maybe Etienne can say more about that.
I would like to have it in the, I mean, not 12.1, but 12.2, at least as experimental. And
yeah. I don't see a fundamental problem with this. I mean, I think that the code generation from the compiler should allow us to do this. The only thing that's going to go wrong is that people are going to say, oh, I really would like to use this function in my net function, and it's not supported. But you know, I think the argument somehow, you know, it's a design question. Okay, the general principle of design, right? Of you don't give users an expectation that something is going to work and then block it. As in, you know, if we say, if the kinds of functions people expect to work, namely arithmetic functions, things like this, if those all work, then I suppose that's, you know, that's something. If they then expect that, you know, combinatorial optimization is going to work inside the net function loop, well, it's not going to work there, at least not in the short term. But you know, I think it's probably something where we can reasonably get net function working through whatever the compiler can currently compile.
Yeah. Of course, there will be many steps to this project. At first, the user will have to write the gradient as well. And then maybe in some future, we can do the automatic differentiation, so the user don't have to write the gradient.
Yeah, it's kind of bizarre. I mean, we've had some version of automatic differentiation for like decades, and we still don't have that as a feature that we can use, for example, I mean, we're going to need it for this net function capability, right? We're going to need to be able to derive. I mean, okay, question. From the compiler, I thought Rob had been working, maybe Roger knows about this. I thought Rob had been working on automatic differentiation in the context of the compiler. Is that a true statement?
Yeah, but it's not. It's not finished.
I understand it's not.
In the new compiler you're talking about.
Yes.
So the previous stuff was the old compiler, and that also is not finished. You know,
Okay.
it was a partial automatic differentiation. And
okay.
the new
well,
one.
So, yeah.
Well, the new one, well, you tell me. It's not clear to me what the state of the compiler team is these days.
It's chugging forward and building all kinds of interesting things. It should be ready to. I mean, there's no reason why we couldn't work on automatic differentiation with what the compiler has right now. The compiler is a big project and has many. There are many shorter-term deliverables that are arriving, like the data structures capability of version 12.1.
Right, but not the compiler itself. Is not. I mean.
Yes, the compiler itself has many, many new things in 12.1, but the compiler isn't finished because it never will be. Right? It's an infinite project. But I think that the parts of the compiler necessary to do automatic differentiation of functions which can be realistically automatically differentiated should be ready by now. And I think it's a reasonable thing to do. And it's something Etienne will need to pull together for this net functionality. And I mean, that's another criterion of, that's another part of what expectation are we setting, what kinds of functions can appear inside a net function because they need to be automatically differentiatable, right? Because many functions are not. Okay, let's keep going.
Yeah, matrix functions and vector functions became, it's another thing which we don't have symbolic differentiation of symbolic matrix expressions in top level.
Yes.
But you would very much like that in a setting like this.
Right, but that's a whole world of symbolic matrix operations.
Yes.
Which we've supported for years, in some cases for symbolic tensors, but we've never done the more specific case of symbolic matrices.
Yeah, that's not enough, the tensor stuff. I mean, you want determinant and you want...
Oh, I understand that. You want things that are specific to matrices that don't work for general tensors. Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that is an interesting framework that, for whatever reason, we've not found important over the years, but it's an interesting thing to be thinking about. I don't think that's on the short-term roadmap, unless we need some version of it for net function and so on. Okay, should mention any loss. This looks like a very detailed point.
Yeah, this is it's a bug, and Jérôme fixed it.
Okay.
And yeah, we're pretty happy that someone found it.
Good. Thank you for finding it. Okay. Add total examples, total batches to training progress panel. I don't know. That seems like a detailed thing for Etienne, and I think that's been tagged as low priority, but Etienne should look at it. Okay, adversarial networks, neural net support. Isn't that coming?
Yes, exactly. That's what the NetGAN operator is.
Right. That should be in 12.1. So hopefully we have that. And if there's anything, okay, custom neural net layers, that's net function, that should be merged with the other discussion here. Oh, no, it wasn't actually specifically on here. All right, that's that. Okay, that was neural nets. Now, do we have, okay, that was all the items for that. Okay, should we go on? Good, all right. Notebook previews for Dropbox and Friends. Okay, this looks like it's a John Fultz story. By the way, Etienne, I think that is everything for you, if I'm not mistaken. Can somebody else comment on that, please?
I think so. All right, I'm gonna go then.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Later. Bye. Okay. John, are you with us?
I am. I might have a slight bit of background noise because I was trying to make myself some lunch, but yeah.
Fair enough. It's a bit late for lunch, depending on where you are, but Okay, notebook previews for Dropbox and friends. So notebook previews are something that we've looked at in a variety of contexts. Yeah, well, Google Drive, don't we have that? Wait a minute. This is for the cloud, isn't it?
Well, I mean, it's in the context of their clouds.
Yeah, I understand. So we've been
a
bunch of these folks we've been working with.
Yeah. And I'm, I've not been in the loop on the state of what exactly is going on with Google Drive and how our integration is looking there. I mean, I know there's been work on
it's either released or about to be released to somebody. Is Jan here still, or did Jan disappear because we told him this was?
I'm still here, actually. I don't know whether we officially released it yet, but maybe not.
Very shortly. Is there a page we can show for it?
I don't think so, no. But the idea would be that within Google Drive, you install the Wolfram app, and then you can just open a notebook file.
Yeah, it's not clear to me that you would get a preview from within Google Drive. You would get opening behavior from within Google Drive.
Yeah.
So that's a separate issue, and that's, I mean, I know for some of these organizations, some of these companies, I know that our partnerships group has been working with them, but that seems like it is more an item for the partnerships group than for us, since we're not in control of what the preview is. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Let's move on. So that needs to get.
Can I ask just, is there even anything to do on a desktop? Isn't that the whole point of these things? They behave like another drive.
Well, yeah, this is primarily when you're dealing with their websites. You go to Dropbox's website, you go and they'll show you, like, they'll render PDF for you, or
I see.
Or GitHub, which can render various things, for example.
Yeah, well, we're in, some of these places we are actively working with, so hopefully there will be good solutions there. But as I say, I think there's a partnerships problem, not a problem to be solved from our technology stack. Unless there was a standard, I mean, something like OEmbed, which is
we had to do something special when Apple decided to show previews, right? And we did something special for the Mac OS.
Yes, but that was working with Apple. That wasn't we just do something.
That's right.
Right. So that's why I'm saying this is a thing which is it's a partnership issue, and to identify which are the relevant things, and I don't know the precise state of all of them. But that's so from this meeting that needs to be passed to the partnerships crew, and they may already have solutions for all of these. I do not know, but it's
I'll
not.
let them know about it.
Thank you. Okay, ugly font in docked cells.
John? I've seen this reported as a bug. I'm not. I'm not clear what's going on yet.
What is the issue?
I'm not sure.
Okay, fine. So we have no idea.
It's not something that's reproducible everywhere.
I think it's the list log linear plot text.
What? Okay, I'm going to assume that's just a bug. I'm not going to look at it here. Slide transitions missing in presenter tools. Yeah. I don't know what the current state of that is. That would be Andre's team who would know about that, I believe. Anybody here know about that? I thought there was a bunch of very elaborate work on slide transitions. It seemed to me over elaborate, actually. I mean, I hate these slide shows where things do kind of elaborate, movie director style.
Well, but now's when we should be talking about them with the new Star Wars movie out.
Indeed, right.
Yeah, right. This is when you get all your wipes and your whatever, yeah.
I think that the report itself is a little vague, so that's the problem. Like, it's not totally clear what's being asked for.
Right, well, I don't know what transitions exist in. I mean, I never use them, but I don't know what transitions.
Well, the transitions that exists or that the front end directly provides. Oh, I don't remember the list, but I mean, it's not anywhere near like, for example, what you're going to find in PowerPoint. I think there may be half a dozen or something like that.
But so the question is, are people using them? If they are, and they want more, then that's what we'd like to know. And then what are the top ones that people would like that we don't currently have?
Right. Yeah.
Okay, better formatting of notebook items in the window menu. That's a good background noise. That's a good point, actually. That's a good point. It's a good point. It's a very, well, down here, it's a very, bland list. It's not interesting here, but sometimes I have a list that goes all the way down to here. And it is true that there is no organization in those, and it would be nice if there was some iconography. Is that something that is readily addable, or is that something where it's the operating system that controls that menu?
Well, so we, I mean, all the menu work that we've done so far has been standard stuff, and we can, clearly there are applications out there that that do kind of custom drawn menus, and we can do it too. The big problem is there's a certain issue of economy of effort in terms of if we do that, it has to be implemented 3 times. Once for
Mac, Windows, Linux.
Once for Windows, once for Qt. So
right.
And it just as a general matter of priorities for things that have to be implemented 3 times, the priorities need to be a bit higher.
Okay, but this being able to group documentation notebooks at the bottom of the window, that's a reasonable thing to do. I think that's would be a reasonable suggestion.
Yeah, and
just separate those off, and that just separate them off with a separator. That seems like a very readily doable thing. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the issues here is that we are not indicating the things like the folder that the notebook is in, and we could probably do that. In other words, putting a parenthetical after the name of the here seems like it would be a fairly straightforward thing to do. Like, for example, I will often have a bunch of things which have the same name in different folders. I mean, I think these will be, let's look at some basic things like that, but at least separating off the documentation ones does seem like a good suggestion. Make sense?
Yeah.
How many more pages of this are there? Wait a minute. Is this stuff we haven't covered yet? Oh, shoot. Okay, this is not well organized. Sigh. I won't be able to continue this as long as I did the previous one. All right, notebook interface. Non-default options only in the options browser.
So there is a way to do that now. It's not the finest method, and we can talk about doing something more. But I added a remark to the report just to make it clear in case the reporter wasn't aware that it is possible now, at the very least.
Okay. Well, I mean, just having that sounds like a UX issue of how do you ask for that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is such a giant, complex thing that one would think that asking for all non-default options would be a doable thing up here. That's just a button.
Well, I mean, the big thing to understand about the option inspector is it's really a programmer's interface. And I mean, for this particular feature request, that's okay, because clearly what's being asked for is programming type stuff. But we shouldn't pretend that the option inspector is anything other than a programmer's interface.
Right. Okay. Do not show, do you want to evaluate all initialization if it will happen anyway? Why would it happen anyway?
Because you have the cells selected. And yeah, I mean, if you select all cells in the notebook, you'll get that.
Yes, that's right. That's stupid. I agree.
Yeah. So
good suggestion.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
Substring completion for documentation search, we're well aware of that issue. That is under active development. Modding loading boxes for launch kernels, yes, that's also under active development. That's part of the unification of progress monitoring. Move front-end processing of dynamic updates from the kernel out of the GUI thread.
Yeah, well, that's there are very difficult issues here.
I mean, we are planning another service kernel to deal with code assistance. Is this an asking for yet another service kernel to do something yet different?
No. This is what happens is that there are cases where you are wanting to resolve a dynamic, and it's synchronous. So it just waits until the kernel has finished evaluation, and sometimes that's a short period of time, and sometimes that's a long period of time. But if you're asking for something synchronous, then waiting is the only thing that you can do. Now, and that's really, I mean, there are protocol issues surrounding this. There's also the fact that right now we don't have another option. I mean, like, one option that one could imagine is, if you have a dynamic box, you could throw up a placeholder and then come back and fill it in later. If you have a dynamic option.
So one question here is, if we look at what the cloud is doing, which is a whole separate implementation stack with completely different technology and completely different ambient constraints, how consistent is it? And are there things that we learn from what the cloud does?
The cloud sometimes says it's okay not to draw a cell. The desktop front end was built in a world where that's never okay.
What do you mean by that?
If you can't draw the cell, you stop until you can draw the cell.
Right, but I mean, your point is that the cloud goes on and renders the other stuff in the notebook, and then leaves that cell saying, sorry, I can't render this, or I'm going to try and render it later.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, it renders a placeholder, that looks nothing like what the final version of the cell will look like.
No, I understand. I mean, the constraint on the desktop has always been, it is the gold standard, of what the notebook actually is how it renders on the desktop, notwithstanding that absolutely bizarre bug that I ran into yesterday, which I'm glad you've now fixed. This is the only time that's ever happened to me, of something that appears one way in the rendering of the notebook, but actually has a different underlying structure that is completely different.
Yeah, well, that's because you don't get to see all the bugs. So
it's not. I didn't even think that kind of bug was possible. Fortunately, it wasn't there very long. But okay. In any case, but I mean, so the issue here is, I mean, this is a more complicated discussion about what would be acceptable behavior in the modern world for a desktop notebook rendering. Is that true?
Yeah.
We should have that discussion.
And then the engineering requirements behind it, which may be considerable depending on what's being asked for.
Yeah, but maybe there's a way of doing this where we get a large part of the benefit, and in some bizarre situation, there's a gray box rendered on the in the notebook for a while. And that probably 30 years ago, that would have been completely unacceptable because people would just have been totally confused by it. But today, with web browsers loading things asynchronously and so on, that may not be nearly such a confusion.
Yeah.
So we should look at that, please. Okay, standard characters palette to include standard emojis. That is a reasonable suggestion.
We don't have support for standard emojis yet, but we're working towards it.
Right. We have support in many parts of the system, but not yet in all of the desktop notebook rendering.
Right? Or editing. I mean,
what about in the cloud? Don't we have support for it in the cloud?
Yeah, modulo editing finesse, I would say.
Yeah, there are still editing issues in the cloud, aren't there?
Okay. Non-English characters are serifs and code font, which is ugly. You mean the alphas and things like that? That's a font matching issue, and that's an issue of the.
Okay. No. This is a very detailed issue, and it has to do with specifically Windows, specifically Microsoft, and their font fallback mechanism.
Okay.
It doesnn't. The font fallback mechanisms are extremely operating system dependent.
So do we not define the correct fallback, or is it?
We don't have control over the fallback.
I thought we gave a list of. Don't we have an option which gives a list of fallback fonts?
No. What you're thinking of is if the font doesn't exist, but in this case, the font exists. It just doesn't have all of the glyphs. So
if you click on the ticket, then you'll see that it's about Chinese characters. Specifically was reported by a Chinese user, specifically about Chinese characters and how they interact with the other characters. So.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, okay. Okay, so is this in fact, as you say, a Windows fallback mechanism that's operating here?
Yeah.
So how does one change it? I mean, is that something you can set in the operating system?
Well, the interesting thing is that, there is some documentation about this here and there, but like the Asian character fallback under Windows doesn't seem to always obey Microsoft's documentation. It's like they have some special mechanism for that.
So,
we can look into it, but I'm not.
Well, the question is, it may not be our problem
without completely re-implementing what should be an operating system level feature, which I hate doing.
Yeah, well, I know. We get messed up by that every time because the operating system changes and then nothing works and so on. All right, let's keep going. Auto-completion for second argument of bounding region. I'm sure that's just a bug. Do we really need to look at this? It'd be great to clean out things like that from this list.
Sorry, I don't remember. I didn't.
Do we really need to look at this? Come on, we surely don't need to look at this here. Auto-completion for the second argument of bounding region. I'm sure that's just a bug. Let's, okay. Path auto-completion should work relative to current directory.
I don't think that I agree with that. It's, first of all, you might not even have a kernel running.
Wait. What we're talking about, if you say something like, what would be an example? File browse or something. What is it even called? What would be an example?
OpenRead.
Import, for instance. Okay, and then I type quotes, and then I get a file browser. Okay, and what directory did it go to there?
Well, in this case, it's related to recent directories for file browsing of.
Okay, so what is the issue here?
Well, what's being suggested is that it should be relative to directory brackets.
I see. So the kernel.
And I don't agree. I think this will cause problems, not
well.
Fix them.
This is a complicated issue because the front end, which is running on the computer on which this thing is running, on which this user assistance piece is running, might be different from the kernel, from the which could be on the other side of the planet. That is.
Well, but not only that, the directory might not even be the same when this code is actually executed. If you're talking one command in isolation, then
It would be lovely to be able to.
Assuming you press Shift Enter after you typed it in, of course.
Listen, in the file browser, it would be lovely if we were able to. Well, this is a system file browser, isn't it? Is it a system file browser?
Yes, it is.
So we don't get to have a button there that says use the. I mean, look, what we could do here in this thing here would be to have another piece of the autocompletion here that says something, I don't know what the wording would be, but it's basically a file browser relative to the current directory. And if it can resolve that, great. See what I'm saying? So in other words, it's basically file browse started on directory open close. I think that's a reasonable suggestion. Let's.
Anyway. That's not what the user's asking for.
What are they asking for?
Well, they're asking for, they want to see completions as they type. They don't want to use the file browse dialog.
Completions as they type where?
As you're typing the file name. If you type in an absolute path, like try quote tilde slash something, to show stuff in your home directory, for example.
There's people are saying that would be a great feature, but I don't know what the that refers to. So it'd be useful to know what the that refers to. I don't know. Does not support this. Okay, what are we talking about here? Can somebody please process these things before we get to
I've been trying to tell you. I mean.
Okay, but then I don't agree with you because obviously, right? If you should have the option.
Look, if you want to import a file name, you want to write a program that imports a file called foo.png, and this is in a program, and it's called set directory and done the right thing. But then as you're typing in foo, it says, oh, well, I happen to see in your current directory that you have, a foo25.png, and this is what I'm going to offer. And there's no foo.png because it's in the context of a program.
So what? So what? You're not going to be typing the literal file name in the context of a program.
Auto-completions, which give you bad information, are worse than no auto-completions at all.
No. Look. That example is spurious because in the context of a program, you're not going to have the raw thing that you're typing is not what you are interested in, right? The raw thing, the program is going to be controlling what file you're looking at, etc. The issue here, I think, is that there's this issue between these other scientific computing environments, whatever they may be, probably were never built with a client-server architecture as ours has been for the last 33 years. And therefore, they didn't have the issue that you're not necessarily running on. What's that?
Maybe you can't write real programs in them.
That's also possible too. But
I think this is just the session based, right? Like whatever.
Yes, it's not just session based. It's based on, what's happening at the very moment that you're typing. What state is the kernel in? At the very moment that you're typing.
Guys, come on. This is what's being asked for is a piece of user assistance technology that has the feature, like all user assistance technology, it tries to do the right thing based on the information it has at the time. If it cannot figure out what to do, if it's deeply nested inside a program, it will either do nothing or
what is deeply nested inside a program?
I don't know. But the fact is, there is a point at which it can perfectly well say, if you press a button that causes it to compute directory at the moment when you press the button. This is really just a question of messaging in the button here that it is going to be something that says file browse relative to directory open close. If it said that, then you know what you're getting. And if you don't like it, well, then don't press it. Right? In other words, if there was a button right there that said open the file browser with the current directory as your
once again, that's not what's being asked for.
I understand that's not what's being asked for, but I'm saying that would be a useful thing which would achieve what you want to get to here. If you want auto-completion that is based on, I understand the argument for not auto-completing a file name based on just random characters that have to be typed in. I think that's a reasonable argument. What I'm saying is, if you want to get, which I do think is useful, a file in your current directory, this is a way to do it. Right? You have to pre-think, I'm going to go to a file in my current directory. Let me use a file browser to do it. And let me use its autocompletion rather than my autocompletion, which, as you say, has problems because you don't know whether it's relative to the current directory or all kinds of other things, right? But I think what I'm suggesting is a compromise that will actually achieve what's useful. Am I making sense?
Okay.
Because now
I'm a little unclear on the specifics of the
let me be
interface,
specific.
but
Let
we
me
don't
be
have
specific.
to.
I'm just saying, you know, here would be file browser, and then it's relative to whatever, right? But it's but here you're asking to, you know, file browse relative to. Yeah, I mean these things. People are making comments about random other programs. They have, you know, I'm sure we have command, you know, file completion. If you use a text, you know, if you use a kind of 1980s style interface, I'm quite certain we have that too. Quite certain that if you go here, we have some kind of completion thing that works in the terminal.
No.
We don't? Well, we might have. I mean, probably you could type escape and you get it, but that's a completely different problem. Being able to do it in a terminal interface is a completely different and much simpler problem. But in any case, I think the right solution here is to have, you know, file browser relative to whatever this file browser is relative to, and it should probably say, and file browser relative to directory open close, which you can specifically ask for. That's what I think we should do. We can bring it up in the next user assistance meeting to confirm that.
Okay.
This is a bug. I don't want to see these. And that is a sensible autocompletion for that. And it should be generated unless it's just the default. Unless it's being used by default.
So for the next one, what I'm intending to do instead is to implement, and you and I have talked about this before, programming ligatures.
You've been planning that for a while.
Yeah.
I think that these ligatures are a slightly complicated story because people, you know, to have it, so long as it visually looks like bracket still, I guess people will know how to type it.
Well, I mean, the whole point is you type in the input form and it will automatically show you kind of, you know, the actual meaning of it, or the actual kind of collapse. Or I shouldn't say that because of course bracket still means the same thing, but that, you know, it's giving you a sign that it's not just a regular set of brackets. It's a, you know, it is a double bracket by virtue of, you know, showing it in a special way.
No, but I don't know how to type that. I really think that's, you know, people are always saying, how do you type that arrow?
No. But what I'm saying is you would still type the bracket. It would show.
I know, I'm well aware. I'm well aware. But if people see that character, they do not know how to type it. You see what I'm saying?
So what's your point?
I'm not sure it's a great thing to do. I'm not sure. I think it's not a slam dunk obvious good idea.
So type this. F bracket X double bracket 1 close. So now imagine in a programming ligature world where it would automatically indicate and maybe better, you know, like G of 1 inside there, or, you know, instead of X part of 1, X part of G of 1 or something like that. And, you know, then it, you know, trying to figure out, and especially if you start, you know, wanting to, you know, add more arguments or more levels to your part or something like that, you know, it gets difficult to work your way through the brackets, but having the I think the visual indicator.
This does look nice. I agree. This looks nice. I think the weight.
But the problem with typing these in though is that a left double bracket does not match 2 right brackets, and 2 left brackets don't match a right double brackets.
I understand.
That's considered a syntax error.
Yeah, I understand.
And so that's why I'm suggesting
But,
that rather than
the
asking
ligature
people
by
to
kerning, basically, you're suggesting that it effectively kerns the characters as a spacing matter.
Yes, but you know, the underlying serialization, you know, would still be the two individual characters you typed, and in fact, if you arrowed, you know, if you used the arrow keys to arrow between them, they would split apart as you arrowed through them.
Oh, I see. Well, that's a good idea. I mean, why are we not doing that? I mean, dash greater than could do the same thing.
Exactly, and in fact, I think that, you know, if we did that, we would probably end up. I mean, we'd probably keep the input auto replacement stuff around, but most of the stuff that we do with it now would probably instead become programming ligatures. You know,
well, which means that there's that what would happen is you backspace through this thing here,
and the first backspace would peel off the greater than and leave a dash. That's right.
I wonder how weird that will be. It's interesting. It's a good idea. All right, I am going to have to leave very soon. So I'm afraid we're not going to get through the rest of this.
By the way, I see that it looks like we're getting some support from the folks on the live stream for the ligature idea.
Good.
So I've been wanting to do this for a while. It's just, you know,
good. Well, okay.
It's just never enough time. But yes, this is something I've keenly wanted to do.
Okay. Quick way to insert paths directly from the file manager.
Oh, this is another. This was always possible. It just the person who reported it didn't realize how it could be done. It's if you drag and drop a file into a document, you get the contents of the file. They wanted the file name. You can option drag to get the file name, and they didn't realize that was possible. But
that's,
I mean, it's exactly
not our issue. That's the I mean, I always forget that too. But that's a you know, Mac OS issue.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those, you know, operating system standards that are kind of obscure, but they are standard. So
these lack of autocompletions should just be bugs. So let's please treat them as that.
Sure.
Complete up to longest matching string.
Interesting. I'm not. You know, I think this is one of those things about which reasonable people could come to violent blows. But yeah. I mean, you know, we could look into it.
Even? Oh, I see. So a keyboard mechanism to autocomplete up to the longest uniquely matchable, but that depends on the tail of this creature, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a mess. Because the tail of that animal.
I mean, it's when you say when you say a keyboard mechanism, I mean, I really think it needs, you know, you need to make a choice. You can't offer both. You need to make a choice, and maybe the choice could be an option. You could argue. Wait.
That's right now. It's the first autocompletion that you get by typing enter, right?
That's right. Assuming that you don't use the arrow keys to navigate that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But were you to have another key, like tab, for example, that auto-completed up to the longest,
I think having enter and tab do different things would be incredibly confusing.
Well, does tab do anything right now?
It auto-completes.
I didn't know that. Oops, that wasn't tab. So it does. What do you know?
I mean, it's my perception that lots of people use tab and lots of people use enter. I actually tend to use tab, but I think a lot of people out there use enter, and having them do different things, I think that's a huge mistake.
Right. I mean, if you really wanted to get cutesy with it, you could have shift tab do this, but nobody would ever know that.
No.
I think that's better than having some weird global setting to say, do you want to do, but this idea, I think it's a mistake to, there's already enough pressure on the autocomplete sequence, menu. It's like, well, should we add that thing in the tail? Well, if we add that in the tail, it's going to kill the whole animal, so to speak.
Well, in my view, I've seen systems that do one way. I've seen systems that do the other.
No, I understand.
Like file name completion from the shell, from bash.
Yeah, I know that does.
That's exactly what's being described here.
Yes, but file names are a different story. File names. The problem here is that there can be something way in the tail where it's kind of nice to have that in the autocomplete menu. But were you to add it, it's very sensitive to that, addition, because it's going to affect, longest substring, completion, right? I think I agree this is a mistake. The only thing I could imagine is some cutesy key combination to do it. Proper syntax coloring with. I think that's just an implementation thing that is slowly going to get done. Pop-up should show documentation link for package functions. Yes, I'm sure that's correct. That's probably just a missing piece. I don't know what that is there. That's crazy. That thing down there is just nuts and shouldn't be there. I think there's an argument that, except for some very special cases, one should not, arguably, unless one's explicitly loaded a package, one should not autocomplete to package to context names. In other words, unless this session has had that context name either explicitly loaded or typed somehow, it shouldn't be mentioned in the autocomplete list.
Well,
that stuff is really noise.
I'm not sure what's intended by the screenshot, given the matek being loaded there. I don't know.
Well, the point is, for some reason, the symbols in that package didn't show up here.
No. Click on the second image. That's a better. Notice that find root as an information thing. Now click on the second one, and now notice that matek does not have the information thing, even though there is a documented page for matek function.
Sorry, where is that documentation page?
So this must be
in a Packlet. Yeah, so it's there. It's in principle, it's findable if you press F1 or if you go to the documentation.
Well,
and
the more general story is that we don't have as much functionality, and what we do have isn't as documented as well as it should be for people who are writing packlets to plug into the various user assistance stuff.
Right, and that's something we need.
I totally concede that's
right. But if there is a standard place where the documentation plugin happens from that packlet, we should be able to find that. That should be a fairly straightforward piece of low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, click on the third image link. You'll see the difference. Like go back one, and now click on the third one. It has it there. The eye is there, and so like on the right of that image, you can see.
I understand. I understand. I got it. Right. The point is that when the packlet was loaded, the hooking in that it did to hook this thing into the documentation system did not hook it into the user assistance system. That's the issue, right?
Yeah.
And that is a good idea, and it should be done. Okay, unfortunately, I have to go. So much as I would love to continue this, I think this will have to continue after the holidays. We did finish that section, didn't we? Yes, good.
Oh, I just want to say that somebody suggests something in the live stream that looks a lot like the fuzzy autocompletion matching, which we are working on. I don't know if it's going to be in 12.1 or not, but we are very actively working on it. So,
is it demoable in the prototype build?
I'm not sure if it's on by default.
No,
it's not on by default. So
yeah, we're still working on it to make it not stupid, so to speak. Okay, all right. Well, so next time we will start. I think we might do even better than to put these in alphabetical order, but we're going to have a bunch of sound, symbolics, system. Okay, those are the S's. Oh, they look like some interesting suggestions here. All right, much as I would like to go on right now, let's not do that, and let's pick this up probably in the first week of the new year. And unless people want it, I think we won't have enough people around next week. Okay, thanks all very much, and see you soon. Bye.